Hello and welcome to NTD News Today. Kevin Hogan here. Let's take a look at our top stories. The latest updates in Afghanistan. We take a look at highlights from President Biden's first interview since the Taliban takeover and reactions from lawmakers. Human Rights Watch says the international community must help Afghan women. This while a female news presenter claims the Taliban would not let her go back to her job. And we hear from U.S. veterans on the pain of leaving behind even one ally. They tell us about their hopes and heartbreak amid questions plaguing the Afghanistan withdrawal. Flights from China will soon get much less crowded. The U.S. Transportation Department is limiting some Chinese airline flights to just 40% passenger capacity for a month after China put similar limits on several U.S. carrier flights. And Cuba's communist authorities tighten control over the internet. Human rights advocates say it will give the regime more power to restrict online speech of citizens. The U.S. Capitol Police are investigating a bomb threat near the Library of Congress. That's right across from the Capitol. Nearby buildings are being evacuated. The Capitol Police confirmed the bomb threat on Twitter. A U.S. law enforcement source says officials are investigating a man in a vehicle outside the Library of Congress with possible explosives. Police blocked off roads surrounding the Capitol complex. Fire and rescue trucks headed to the scene. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives says it was sending a bomb technician to support police. The Capitol Police asked anyone working in the Cannon congressional offices to relocate. Those in the Madison building have to bar themselves in their offices. The Library of Congress's Jefferson building was also evacuated. The House of Representatives and Senate are not currently in session. Chaos continues outside the airport in Afghanistan's capital, with thousands desperate to leave the country. NTD's Jessica Beatty has more.
U.S. forces fired tear gas near Kabul Airport Wednesday night to disperse crowds of Afghans trying to flee Taliban rule. Soldiers helped a little girl and an Afghan woman over the wall. Once they get through the entrance, they reportedly still have to be processed to check if they have the right documents. Taliban and NATO officials say 12 people have been killed in and around the airport since Sunday, either by gunshots or stampedes. And President Biden Wednesday defended his handling of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan in his first interview since the Taliban takeover, saying problems were inevitable.
We're going to go back in hindsight and look, but the idea that somehow there's a way to have gotten out without chaos ensuing, I don't know how that happens.
An estimated 10 to 15,000 Americans were still in Afghanistan Wednesday. Biden said he's committed to keeping U.S. troops there until every American is evacuated, even if it means staying past the deadline.
We're going to do everything in our power to get all Americans out and our allies out. And if there's American citizens left, we're going to stay till we get them all out.
Biden said an estimated 50 to 65,000 Afghan allies and their families are looking to flee the country. Separately Wednesday, the U.S. Embassy in Kabul said the U.S. government was not able to ensure safe passage to the airport. Lawmakers reacted to Biden's interview Wednesday. Republican Peter Meyer, an Iraq veteran, disagreed with Biden's statement that chaos was inevitable.
I don't accept it. There certainly was never going to be a positive outcome, but we could have prevented it becoming this nightmare scenario.
Meyer says a bipartisan group of lawmakers urged the administration, going back to April, to speed up the special immigrant visa process.
They failed to heed our calls. We had time, we lost months, and this is here we are.
But Democrat Jake Auchincloss, a Marine vet who served in Afghanistan, had a more positive view.
Withdrawal from a country whose moniker is the graveyard of empires was never going to be smooth sailing. And we're seeing that in real time now. But more importantly, we are seeing the U.S. military and this administration adapt to the fluid situation.
The deadline for U.S. forces to withdraw is August 31st, less than 2 weeks away. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
The FAA says U.S. carriers can fly over Afghanistan or help with evacuation flights if they get Defense Department permission. The agency says crews landing at Hamid Karzai International Airport do so at their own risk. They have to use visual flight rules due to a lack of air traffic control. Some airlines seem more intent on avoiding Afghanistan than landing in the now Taliban-controlled country. 3 carriers just announced they're changing routes to fly around it. And we hear from an Afghan film director about her escape from Kabul. She says it was the saddest moment in her life, and she's sounding the alarm about the Taliban's rule. That's while Human Rights Watch says women in Afghanistan are terrified, and the group is taking steps to help women and rights activists escape the country despite all the challenges. The first woman to head the state-run Afghan film organization tried to withdraw money from a bank in Kabul on Sunday, but with no luck. At that moment, she decided to flee the country with some of her family. That's despite the chaos at the airport.
The moment that we missed the first airplane, it was the most sad moment in my life, because I thought that, okay, we cannot go anymore, we stay.
She says the Taliban don't support art nor value culture. And she says they don't know cinema and don't like independent artists.
They are afraid of educated, independent women. So it means that they are very, very now we hear that they started the rules that they want we put burqa, they want we put like this kind of hijab, and they want like we be hidden, invisible.
Another Afghan woman is speaking out. A news presenter at the state-owned Radio Television Afghanistan claims the Taliban won't let her go back to her job.
My name is Shabnam Dowran. I have been a journalist for 6 years, and I had been working with Milli Television when I heard that the news system's rules have changed. With the courage that I had in me, I went to the office to start my work, but the current system's soldiers didn't give me permission to start my work.
The Taliban nor the news organization responded to requests for comment right away, but the Taliban's main spokesperson said women will be allowed to work and study, and they will be active in society, but within the framework of Islam. And now that the Taliban rule the country again, the former captain of the Afghan women's soccer team is sending a message to the players. She's telling them to delete their social media accounts, erase their public identities, and burn their players' kits. That's for their own safety, as the coach said the Taliban has killed, raped, and stoned women before.
We are standing with our sisters. We will use the same football pitch that you used for execution, public execution, and you used to shed one of our sisters in the penalty area. We will kick the ball from there, and we are standing strong. But we announced it, and all these beautiful, amazing young girls put their faces and stood strong, very vocal against Taliban.
The Taliban militants had previously stopped women from working and prevented girls from going to school, and even beat them in public for disobedience. And the captain is saying that soccer allowed women to make a strong stand for their rights, and FIFA is sharing its sympathy with them during the Taliban takeover. Pentagon leaders are telling U.S. troops who fought in Afghanistan their sacrifices were not in vain. It comes as a fierce debate erupts among veterans over America's chaotic withdrawal.
Amid the turmoil, panic, and the shattering end to 20 years of combat, U.S. veterans of the Afghan war are struggling. Some taking calls around the clock from Afghan allies trying to find a way out. Mike Breen is a former Army captain.
We made promises to people because we were told to. We made promises to people that we would protect them if they stood with us. And the deepest, most core belief that many of us carried around was that no one gets left behind.
The administration has acknowledged that impact.
I know that these are difficult days for those who lost loved ones in Afghanistan and for those who carry the wounds of war.
But the truth goes far beyond bad feelings. Post 9/11 veterans have a significantly higher rate of suicide than other vets. And a study from Brown and Boston universities estimates over 30,000 active duty and veterans in that age group have died that way, many more than the roughly 7,000 killed in combat. Why? In part, the study suggests the length of the Afghan and Iraq wars took a terrible toll, subjecting troops to multiple deployments and repeated traumas. And now this. Sharissa Jackson is a retired Air Force nurse who has dedicated her life to helping vets. She nearly died in Afghanistan.
It was like, what was all of this for? Why did I work so hard? Why was I gone for 6 months away from my family?
Jason Kander, former Missouri Secretary of State, works to help vets as well, and he served in Afghanistan too.
A buddy of mine said to me not long ago, he said, obviously the Vietnam veterans and others had it really bad too, but at least their wars ended.
And so it is with so many who went there, who fought, who believed, who are still proud, like former Green Beret and NFL player Nate Boyer.
We did what we could We fought for those that can't fight for themselves, and we still do that today, and we're still going to do that in the future moving forward.
Now they are all watching and wondering, after all the years, the victories and losses, the fighting and grieving. What will the legacy be, and how will we all live with it?
This is the question. Is the last act of an American soldier in Afghanistan going to be pushing a refugee, pushing an American ally, pushing a former interpreter away from an airplane while they get on, or pulling them aboard?
On Wednesday, the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld a Texas law. It effectively bans the most common abortion procedures for terminating second trimester pregnancies. The move reverses a ruling last year by a 3-judge panel of the same court.
Dilation and evacuation, or D&E, is the standard abortion procedure used after 15 weeks of pregnancy. The newly reinstated law forbids D&E abortions unless an additional procedure is first performed to bring about the demise of the fetus, which a dissenting judge wrote would force women into, quote, painful, invasive, expensive treatments that pose significantly elevated risks to the woman's health. Similar D&E abortion bans in other states have been struck down by the courts, according to the Center for Reproductive Rights. The 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals decision marks the first time a federal court has upheld a ban on the procedure and reverses last year's ruling by a 3-judge panel on the same court that said the law was unconstitutional. Physicians who are found to have violated the measure would face up to 2 years in prison.
We're about to make it law.
The ruling comes 3 months after Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed into law a separate bill banning abortions outright as early as 6 weeks. Several abortion rights groups have filed suit to block that measure before it takes effect on September 1st.
As more schools, businesses, and entertainment venues are requiring COVID-19 vaccinations, the courts now have to rule on lawsuits challenging these mandates. How are courts handling these cases so far? NTD's Melina Weiskup brings us more.
The Supreme Court has declined to rule on the very first case regarding vaccine mandates. The first of its kind lawsuit was introduced by a group of Indiana University students who say that these mandates violate their right to bodily integrity. The students first lost their case in a circuit court because the judge said that in order for him to rule differently, the Supreme Court would ultimately have to reconsider their own ruling from 1905 on vaccine mandates.
Jacobson versus Massachusetts from 1905, where Massachusetts had a requirement of people to get vaccinated for smallpox or pay a fine. There's going to be some debate that's already erupted on the Supreme Court. How far can that go, and how far can it go without any exemptions?
Justice Amy Coney Barrett declined to take up the Indiana University case because the school does allow for religious and medical exemptions to the vaccine mandate. But Carrington says should the court be faced with the case where no exemptions were allowed, it's likely the court would dive into arguments.
Given the court so far being pretty open to religious liberty claims, I think that there's a pretty good chance that a lawsuit like that would at least get a good number of votes if it got to the Supreme Court. We're going to see how they want to balance religious liberty objections versus public claims about health. But given that, I think that a lawsuit would at least get a pretty serious hearing before the Supreme Court.
And he says vaccine restrictions could open the door for discrimination cases, depending on how far the courts go. The circuit court judge who ruled on the Indiana University case said that students who do not want to be vaccinated may go elsewhere. And places that do allow for religious exemptions are still forcing unvaccinated people to wear masks and socially distance. This is one reason George Mason University professor Todd Zawinski is suing his university. His only options are get vaccinated, wear a mask, or get fired. His suit claims this kind of requirement forces him to publicly disclose his unvaccinated status, which infringes upon his liberty interests. In addition, he says it ignores the existence of natural immunity.
And the idea that they would compel me to do this when I have natural immunity, when I have a demonstrated antibodies test that shows I have very robust natural immunity, while at the same time allowing these other vaccines to qualify just doesn't satisfy the constitutional requirements.
His case is awaiting trial, and just this week, a nonprofit group called Children's Health Defense filed a lawsuit against Rutgers University in New Jersey over their vaccine mandates. So we'll have to see how the courts continue to handle these variety of cases moving forward, and if the Supreme Court will revisit or perhaps even change their ruling from 1905 on vaccine mandates. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
And New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio is making some exemptions to the vaccine mandate. They apply to certain professional performers and athletes who don't live in New York City. The mayor signed an executive order Monday clarifying the exemptions. The following people don't have to show proof of vaccination to enter indoor entertainment venues, but they do have to wear masks. They include performing artists coming to New York City to perform, professional athletes coming to the city to compete, and anyone that accompanies them. They cannot be New York City residents and cannot be employed by New York City venues. As for restaurants, customers who only enter to place an order, pick up an order, or use the restroom don't have to show proof of vaccination. There are no other exemptions. The Federal Emergency Management Agency is working to prepare disaster response efforts as the height of the Atlantic hurricane season approaches.
You know, disasters don't have any colors. Disasters aren't red, disasters aren't blue. Disasters don't discriminate. They affect all of us equally the same. And so we just want to make sure that we are putting everything we have in place ahead of the impact of a storm. If we know that it's coming, making sure we're sending in the resources after a storm so we can help the people that have been impacted.
Criswell says she's keeping watch over Tropical Storm Henri. Experts say it could become a hurricane and hit New England hard in the coming days. The agency is offering an unprecedented $5 billion to help states and local communities prepare for disasters. She says that she will fight to keep the level of funding equally high in coming years. The agency is also urging more people to buy flood insurance, and they're creating different insurance levels based on specific flood risks. FEMA also expanded its online National Risk Index to help people better understand the disaster risks that affect their community. Preparations are underway in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula ahead of Hurricane Grace. Grace is expected to make landfall early Thursday south of Cozumel. 8 municipalities are under the highest red alert, and at least 125 tourists have been evacuated from hotels. Waves up to 4 meters high are expected. That's according to the governor of Mexican state Quintana Roo. And crossings from Cancun to Isla Mujeres have been suspended. Businesses have been asked to close, and there's a ban on alcohol in some areas, including Tulum and Cozumel. The Cuban regime is further tightening control over social media. Those who post content that, according to authorities, damages the country's prestige will be deemed cyber terrorists.
The Cuban Communist regime announced Decree 35 on Tuesday. It bans the spread of messages and content the regime considers offensive or that incite mobilizations or other acts that upset public order.
This model, Decree 35, will demand an adequate, respectful, ethical, and truthful use of these communication channels.
The regime claims this is to clamp down on misinformation. It also provides a channel for Cubans to inform authorities about potential law violations. But many citizens and international human rights activists are outraged over the move, saying it would further restrict Cubans' freedoms.
These new laws come to reinforce the prohibition that already exists and legalize things that were being done outside of legal framework, such as the cuts of the internet service, etc. It is a threat to the freedoms and the citizens' rights, which is why it has generated so much rejection among the population.
Part of the decree also orders the state telecom's monopoly to suspend services for users who have sent messages or content that violate the rules. Even human rights nonprofit Amnesty International is paying attention to the tightened control.
It is seeking to limit the space where people can access information freely. Not only the access, but distribute and exchange information. It will be up to the authorities to determine what is false information, and information that seeks to harm the government or against the constitutional precepts.
The Americas director at Amnesty International says this new decree formalizes digital repression, and the Cuban regime is once again seeking absolute control of a monopoly on internet access. Cuban officials have long argued that dialogue is permitted only within the revolution. The Cuban foreign minister wrote about the decree on Twitter, saying we have the right to exercise national sovereignty over cyberspace.
The U.S. Transportation Department says it will limit some flights from Chinese carriers to 40% passenger capacity for 4 weeks. The department made the announcement on Wednesday. It comes after the Chinese regime imposed similar limits on 4 United Airlines flights.
The U.S. Transportation Department slapped limits on Chinese airlines following a similar move by Beijing. The order will limit U.S.-China flights on 4 different Chinese airlines to 40% capacity for at least a month. China told United Airlines earlier this month it would be imposing sanctions after 5 passengers who traveled from San Francisco to Shanghai allegedly tested positive for COVID-19. The U.S. government says China's circuit breaker policy violates the nation's air services agreement, placing, quote, undue culpability on carriers for travelers testing positive. They added that carriers have no means to independently verify positive test results alleged by Chinese authorities or determine where or when a traveler contracted the virus. United said it was pleased to see the U.S. taking action, quote, in pursuit of fairness in this important market. The Chinese embassy in Washington did not immediately comment. The 2 countries' agreement allows more than 100 weekly flights back and forth, although only a fraction of those are currently operating. The U.S. and China have sparred over flight services since the beginning of the pandemic. The latest limits come as many Chinese students head to the U.S. for the start of fall classes.
Coming up, wildfires continue to burn through drought-stricken forests in Northern California, destroying hundreds of homes and forcing thousands to flee. A historic drought is depleting major reservoirs out west. This has forced the closure of a major hydroelectric power plant in California earlier this month. All that and more here on NTD News. Wind-fueled wildfires are blazing through drought-stricken forests in Northern California after destroying hundreds of homes and forcing thousands of people to flee to safety. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
The latest blaze, the Caldor Fire, continued to grow explosively in the Sierra Nevada, southwest of Lake Tahoe, covering 84 square miles after suddenly ravaging Grizzly Flats, a community of about 1,200.
My house has been burnt down. A lot of the houses on the neighborhood, from what I've been seeing on the news, are burnt down. I've been trying to get back up there and I can't. I just bought the house a month and a half ago, my first home ever, my dream.
At least 50 homes burned there, and 2 people were hospitalized with serious injuries on Tuesday. Streets were littered with downed power lines and poles. Houses were reduced to smoldering ash and twisted metal, and remnants of burned-out vehicles littered the streets.
The emotional, and you've never been through this. We've been through a lot of stuff in 39 years together, but not like this, you know. So it's, yeah, it's gone. It's all gone.
In the Sierra Cascades region, about 100 miles to the north, the month-old Dixie Fire expanded by thousands of acres to 993 square miles. 2 weeks after the blaze gutted the Gold Rush-era town of Greenville.
It is exceedingly resistant to control. While we've had some successes and we've had some lines that we've held and made good progress on, when the winds come, we're finding that fires are spotting.
The Caldor and Dixie Fires are among a dozen large wildfires in the northern half of California. The Dixie Fire is the largest of nearly 100 major wildfires burning across a dozen western states, including Alaska.
Biggest fire in states in the state right now is the Dixie Fire. Dixie Fire is the first fire that we're aware of that has burned from the west side of the mountain range all the way over and to the valley floor on the east side of the mountain range.
High temperatures, strong winds, and dry weather have fueled the blazes. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Massive reservoirs in the western United States are drying up as the region grapples with a relentless drought. In California, a major hydroelectric power plant has been forced to close due to a lack of water to generate electricity.
California's Lake Oroville is running dry. The second largest reservoir in the state
It was less than a quarter full in August. As the state's drought conditions continue to intensify, its hydropower is also at stake.
In an average year, California gets about 15% of its electricity from hydropower, from hydroelectric dams. When you have a drought year, the reduction in stream flow directly affects how much hydropower you can generate.
Because of the lake's lacking water level, the Edward Hyatt power plant on Lake Oroville was taken offline on August 5th. The shutoff came as a heat wave drove up demand for electricity. California's governor signed an executive order last month, urging citizens to reduce their water level by 15% from 2020 levels.
We have to make up the difference somehow, or encourage people to use much less electricity and to keep their houses a little bit warmer than they would normally like to.
At full capacity, the Oroville hydroelectric plant can power up to 800,000 homes. The current drought marks a change from 4 years ago, when heavy winter rains caused the lake to overflow.
You can see the video of the spillway when it had its collapse and how much water's rushing out, and it's just insane. Now we're standing on what's normally underwater.
Record low water levels in Lake Oroville have also suspended recreational boating, forcing moored boats out of the marina.
So normally we'd be up, there'd be full access here at the marina. We'd still be having rentals. We've shut all our rentals down. It's just not safe on the lake.
And along with the Colorado River, the deepening drought is also reducing power production at the Hoover Dam. Behind the dam, the Lake Mead Reservoir is experiencing its first ever water shortage.
The EPA said Wednesday it's banning the use of a widely used pesticide on food. The pesticide they're referring to is Chlorpyrifos. The agency says it is, quote, associated with potential neurological effects in children. The EPA's move reverses an earlier decision not to ban the substance. Previously, the government allowed for so-called tolerances that designate an amount of a pesticide that is allowed on food. But the ban revokes those tolerances. Still to come, Canadian courts won't say whether they'll extradite the CFO of China's Huawei to face criminal charges, but they did set a date for a decision in the future. Counterfeit law enforcement badges that have been intercepted in Chicago all arrived from China. Border officials say it's not the first time. Stay tuned to find out more.
You worked hard for your money. You invest in stability for your retirement and your family's future, to build and leave them with something greater. The next unprecedented financial crisis, political misstep, or unstable government can depreciate it all away. It was called the gold standard for a reason, the financial preservation of tomorrow. Diversify your assets against inflation, market volatility, and the unknown with real money. Hedge your wealth with the purest form of money, physical gold and silver. Because any currency printed on paper can be manipulated. What's backing up your IRA? Do what you need to do right now to be prepared with the Reagan Gold Group. Visit now, rggusakit.com, or call us at 866-912-1384. Receive up to $2,500 in free silver coins and a free safe with your new precious metals IRA. Call now.
90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. This is a battle between truth and deceit. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
A Canadian justice reserves her decision on whether to extradite Huawei's chief financial officer, Meng Wanzhou, to the United States. She says that she will announce her ruling in October. Associate Chief Justice Heather Holmes says she will likely announce her decision on October 21st. Meng was arrested on a warrant at Vancouver International Airport on December 1st, 2018. She is accused of misleading banking institution HSBC about Chinese tech giant Huawei's business dealings with an Iran-based company. The move put HSBC at risk of violating U.S. trade sanctions. If the justice rules to extradite Meng, Canada's justice minister will also have to agree. She would then be sent to the United States to face criminal charges. Beijing has warned of unspecified consequences if Meng is not released. Both Meng and Huawei have denied the charges. Customs and Border Protection agents in Chicago found several packages from China. They contained counterfeit FBI badges. NTD's Evelyn Lee brings us more on the story.
U.S. border officers in Chicago seized a number of counterfeit law enforcement badges over the past week, all arriving from China. Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, announced the news in a Tuesday press release. The agency seized a total of 9 fake badges, including 1 FBI badge and 8 DEA or Drug Enforcement Administration badges. The parcels they were found in were destined for locations across the U.S. CBP officers say the badges could have led to disastrous consequences harmful to the public. But it's not the first time counterfeits from China have entered the country. Other fake items range from fake currency to COVID-19 related products, including N95 masks. Just last Friday, CBP revealed it had seized thousands of fake vaccination cards this year. The falsified cards come fitted with a CDC logo, and they too are all from China. CBP says China remains the main source for counterfeit goods the agency seizes by far. Indiana's Attorney General is launching an investigation into the state's education system. He's seeking to protect it against nefarious influences from the Chinese Communist Party. Republican Todd Rokita tells talk show host Lars Larson the state's college campuses and its students are at risk. He says he sent a civil investigative demand to Valparaiso University to probe whether the school had violated the Higher Education Act of 1965 or Indiana's Deceptive Consumer Sales Act.
According to filings made by the university at the Federal Department of Education, where the Chinese Communist Party has given over $1 million to Valparaiso for the privilege of operating what we call a Confucius Institute on the campus, that then also goes and sends its hand-picked lecturers and teachers, handpicked by the Communist Party, into K-12 schools around the area.
Some lawmakers on Capitol Hill are also sounding the alarm over the CCP's influence on U.S. education. An elderly couple reportedly drowned in floodwaters following heavy rainfall in Beijing on Monday. Chinese media says the husband was a retired senior official. The couple were driving along a concave road under a bridge built for railways, but the floodwaters ran too high and they couldn't pass through. The outlet said many vehicles were flooded and one was completely submerged. The water level indicator shows that when the incident occurred, the water was about 6 feet high. According to Beijing Daily, the flood is partially a result of drainage system failure. The report says the area's drainage lacked the capacity to siphon off the downpour. The water rose quickly and even manhole covers were pushed open by the backflowing rainwater. A Chinese netizen said it's not the first time the road in this area was blocked by heavy rain, but nothing had been done to increase its drainage capacity. Some lamented, saying they didn't learn any lessons from the floods in Jingzhou City.
Coming up, Olympic champion Allison Felix returns to the track. That's only 2 weeks after she won her 11th medal in Tokyo, making her the most decorated woman in track and field history. Painter Antonio Lopez Garcia works in a public square in Madrid. The world-renowned artist is on his 3rd attempt to depict a renowned statue in the capital. Find out more in just a moment. An Olympic athlete's selfless act to help a young boy isn't going unnoticed. Polish javelin thrower Maria Andrzejczyk posted on her social media saying she heard about an infant who needed a life-saving heart surgery and needed to help. Well, the power of social media strikes again. The athlete posted she was auctioning off her silver medal from the Tokyo Olympics. A Polish supermarket chain, Zabka, won the auction with a bid of $125,000. That money will allow the boy to get the surgery at Stanford University Medical Center. And to make the story a little sweeter, the supermarket decided to give the medal back to the javelin thrower, making it a donation to the boy's cause. It's getting a little medieval in Central Park. Weapons are smashed and armor is put to the test. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on these modern knights.
Probably not what you'd expect to see in Central Park. Knights in armor weighing up to 100 pounds. One Saturday a month, members of Santa's Knights and Gladiators NYC meet here for battle matches. This is the nonprofit's flagship program, offering free martial arts. 40-year-old Damian DeGrazia founded Gladiators NYC 8 years ago.
There's nothing more important than martial arts and fitness for people today, because besides the danger involved, it's the fitness you get out of it, the health that you get out of it that's important, because the thing that's killing Americans the most right now, besides COVID, right, which is health-oriented, kind of fitness-oriented type of challenges as well, is healthy lifestyles and all that kind of stuff. And the more that we can bring that out there, the less we're going to need doctors and medicines and interventional medicine and all that kind of stuff. We just hit the core of it, which is be healthy, do fitness. And when you start to do more fitness, you eat more healthy, you change your lifestyle, and now we're saving lives.
Something the former Air Force member says is his only real motivation in life.
I remember I was asked by a supervisor at Morgan State, like, what motivates you? Does money motivate you? And I was like, no. And I was like, well, what motivates you? I was like, helping people. I like to help people.
The life of a knight doesn't come with a six-figure salary, but he says it's fulfilling, and people love to see him in armor. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Legendary boxer Manny Pacquiao refused to confirm if this week's title fight against Cuba's Jordanis Ugas will be his final professional boxing appearance.
I never imagined that what I have done in boxing accomplished beyond of my imagination from the beginning of my career until now. Amazing. God raised me from nothing into something for a purpose. It might be my last fight, or there's more. We can, one at a time. So that's my answer to those questions that if this is my last fight. So we never know.
Bueno, vine a pelear dos asaltos fuertes. Pienso que si esta es la última pelea de Manny Pacquiao, una leyenda, que lo haga contra un peleador digno, que sacó lo mejor de él y que dieron una gran pelea a los dos.
Pacquiao was prepared to fight welterweight champion Errol Spence Jr., but a retinal tear forced the American to withdraw. Ugas was announced as Pacquiao's new opponent. Ugas beat American Abel Ramos for the vacant WBA regular welterweight title last September and was elevated to WBA super champion after Pacquiao was stripped of the belt because of inactivity. Ugas won a bronze medal at the 2008 Olympics and has won 11 of his last 12 fights. The Olympics are over, but for some athletes, competition continues. Gold medal sprinter Allison Felix is preparing for the upcoming Prefontaine Classic in Eugene, Oregon. Already with 11 Olympic medals under her belt, she seems confident ahead of the race. Here's more.
It's been 2 weeks since Allison Felix returned home to Los Angeles from Tokyo. The sprinter picked up gold in the 4x400 relay at the 2020 Olympic Games, but her race is far from over. In an interview, Felix talked about her participation in this Saturday's upcoming Prefontaine Classic.
I think this will be more fun, more just light. And I think I really just want to be able to compete again and see the fans.
The 35-year-old is an 11-time Olympic medalist and 13-time world champion. She's been crowned the most decorated athlete in track and field history.
For me, really, I've focused on the individual things, at each Olympic Games. That's been my, my main goal, my motivation. But it is really cool to look back and now see kind of over the years, what it's added up to. And just to be in the company, of these greats who have paved the way and inspired me is just very, very humbling.
Describing her path to success, Felix looked back on the smaller moments in her career.
For me, I've kind of learned along the way that it's been the moments getting there and the moments in between that have really been the most special, that have meant the most. And I think sometimes it just gets lost in it. And I think it's just kind of life.
Felix will soon compete in the 200 meters at Hayward Field in Eugene, Oregon.
Residents in Madrid have recently been able to watch one of Spain's greatest living artists set up his studio and work on the famous Puerta del Sol Square. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
Every day from 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. since the start of July, painter and sculptor Antonio Lopez Garcia, 85, sets up his large easel and canvas and begins mixing his paints as a crowd of shoppers, dog walkers, and art lovers assembles around him.
It's a unique moment because all of us that are here right now are witnessing an unrepeatable moment because Antonio Lopez is a living legend of Spanish art. And in my personal life, he played a key role in my decision to study art. I have been fascinated by his art since I was a child.
Lopez has enjoyed a long career in Spain and is renowned for his lifelike depictions of everyday subjects, from city scenes to portraits.
Pissarro, Corot, Manny, Monet, all these painters invented this way of painting, directly from natural elements outside of their studio, outside of their home and out of their control. They went out into the world to paint.
He famously does not rush his work. A portrait of Spain's royal family was unveiled in 2014, 20 years after it was commissioned. And it's not the first time Lopez has tried to depict the iconic square. He first tried to depict the square more than 20 years ago. A second try coincided with construction work.
La Puerta del Sol is an idea I had many years ago, and this is my third try. I started it about 20 years ago or even earlier, and I realized that the format I chose was too small. I wanted to show a lot more of La Puerta del Sol, and it would not fit. I started again, and then they began one of the many refurbishments of La Puerta del Sol, and I lost my place. Precisely when I used to paint, they added or removed something.
Now he has decided the time is right to resume the work he started in 2010. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And soon we take a look at an art form with thousands of years of history, classical Chinese dance, and how it's able to embody ancient virtues. Stay tuned for more.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang Omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang Green Vegetable Omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new!
Hi folks, Joe Namath here with a new message about your Medicare benefits. You may be entitled to transportation, meals, and expanded coverage for dental work that includes extractions, fillings, and dentures, all at no additional cost. Plus, depending on your zip code, you may be entitled to the Medicare benefit that adds money to your Social Security check every single month. Call and get everything you deserve. Call now. It's free.
I'm on a fixed income, so I called to get money added to my Social Security check. They helped me so much.
I called to save money on copays, get prescriptions, transportation, and my dental work covered. I couldn't believe I was spending money I don't have to spend.
Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline, and you can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-764-1930. That's 1-800-764-1930 now.
NTD's classical Chinese dance competition approaches, and we sat down with one candidate, Marilyn Yang, to understand more of her artistic journey and what she has in store for us this year.
A lot of times people ask us, oh, what do you do? And we're like, oh, we're dancers. And they're like, oh, what do you do, ballet or like modern dance? And we're like, oh no, we do classical Chinese dance. And then they're like, oh, what is that?
Marilyn Yang is from classical Chinese dance company Shen Yun. A former gold medal holder, this is her third time joining the competition.
I've been very familiar with classical Chinese culture because my mom was a singer in Shen Yun, and both my brothers are dancers in Shen Yun Performing Arts. So it was kind of like a natural thing for me to follow in their footsteps. Literally, when I was very small, I would look up to the dancers and be like, I want to be up there one day. As a kid, what really enchants you about Shen Yun was the colors, the costumes, and it was always about kind of the excitement of dancing on stage in front of an audience. But then once you actually start professionally, there are a lot of insights that you see afterwards, which is one thing, dance is not easy.
She is particularly impressed with one dance training she received at Shen Yun, Shen Dai Shou, or the body leads the hands, and Kwa Dai Tui, or the hips lead the legs.
It really makes your moves very clean and big, and the way you can express yourself through your dance is a lot more powerful.
In this technique, the core of the body, the source of all emotions, powers all of the movements.
For example, if someone were to express like shyness, instead of just using your arms, for example, to pose like a pose that's like shy, or like you're blocking your face, or that it's like your body is moving first, like happy, like you might move here first, like excitement. It always comes from this one point. Also, Shen Dai Shou Kwa Dai Tui makes our techniques better too. Your spins will be a lot faster, you'll spin a lot more. And then when you use Shen Dai Shou Kwa Dai Tui for jumping and like tumbling, it's very different for a dancer. They'll immediately jump higher and feel like more lofty when they do it.
The dance Yang choreographed for this year's competition shows the story of Wang Zhaojun, one of the four most beautiful women in ancient China. Wang prevented bloodshed in her country by being a peace bride, married off to a remote and barren land that's close to today's Mongolia. But instead of focusing on the teary departure scene, Yang turned to the beauty's life on the barren land.
For me, I incorporated some Mongolian dance moves. I wanted to show that her heart was open. She accepts her fate, and she's not bitter about it, and that it's already become a part of her. Like this culture, this Mongolian culture is part of who she is now. And then, but she sees a flower, and then that brings back, like, the memories come flooding back to her, and it shows that she still has that Han Dynasty maiden in her bones. I don't want people to believe that Wang Zhaojun, her whole life was sorrowful, that it was bitter. I want to show that how she was very generous. She won't drown in her own sorrows, that she will keep looking forward, and then that she'll continue her life in the best way possible.
Yang said classical Chinese dance is able to embody 5,000 years of traditional morality and virtues into its essence, and it requires certain traits from the dancers.
What really stands out is the selflessness. Like when we're dancing on stage, for example, it's not, as dancers, usually people nowadays think it's about the spotlight. They want to be in the front row, they want to be the lead dancer. But for us, it's not about that. We want to give the audience, bring them on a spiritual level. I feel like classical Chinese dance gave meaning to my life because I'm doing something that's bigger than myself.
That's to revive traditional Chinese culture.
Through classical Chinese dance, I got to understand what China's heritage really is supposed to be like. It's divine.
Now she gets to bring these traditions back to life through this expressive art form.
Dance itself is a universal language. Like, you don't have to be of the same culture to understand Chinese dance. You can't really use words to describe China's history, China's dance, Chinese art. It's something you should definitely come and experience for yourself.
The competition will be held on September 2nd through the 5th. If you enjoy dance or ancient Chinese stories or wisdom, you can get your ticket at dance.ntdtv.com. Just click on the top right corner for English. You can also watch our live stream of the competition at ntd.com. Thanks for watching. At NTD, we're honored to be your source for the news. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. In New York City, I'm Kevin Hogan.
We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.